What is Italy's best red wine value? For me, there is nothing that tops Barbera. It's a classic from Northwest Italy that's priced right, it's readily available, and it pairs well with a broad range of dishes. In this video, I'll taste and discuss three classic examples of Barbera from the Piedmont region. All three see good international distribution. A fourth Barbera from a different part of the world will be included as well. Hi, I'm Bob Paulinski. I've been a master of wine for more than 20 years. I've worked in the wine trade for more than 40 years, and I post YouTube videos as often as I can. For starters, the focus here is on the region of Piedmont. This is home to some of the greatest red wines in the world, like Barolo and Barbaresco. Many have excellent aging potential, but the most widely planted grape in the region is Barbera. The wines drink well upon release, and many can age for 6 or 7 years, sometimes longer. All of the wines in this video are from the now readily available 2021 vintage, but much of the information will apply to any vintage. The three Italian wines in this video were all purchased at Total Wine, but they can be found through other retail sources. The wines made from Barbera, along with those from Dolcetto, have never been better, and in my opinion, many of the wines are undervalued in today's wine market. In the vineyard, the grape clusters are medium to quite large in size, and the fruit is densely packed. Typically, the wines display a vibrant red fruit character, lifted acidity, and soft tannins. The use of oak, especially new oak, has become more common in recent years. And while this could be said about many Italian red wines, for me, Barbera is the ideal match with tomato-based dishes. Within Piedmont, there are three commonly encountered Barberas: Barbera del Monferrato, Barbera d'Asti, and Barbera d'Alba. Barbera, of course, is the grape variety, but the next word notes the place of origin. Each place of origin produces a somewhat different style of wine. Barbera del Monferrato has more Barbera vineyards than Barbera d'Asti or d'Alba, but oddly, it's generally the least commonly seen version in the US market. Compared to the others, it tends to be a little more fragrant. Often it has more of a rustic character. Also tends to have a bit less weight. Over the years, I've heard many times that the best Barberas come from Asti. I'm not convinced of this. It's really more about the individual producer versus speaking in generalities. The better versions tend to be ripe and weighty, they have tangy acidity, and they're very soft on the finish. Barbera d'Asti tends to be very plentiful on the export markets. Next is Barbera d'Alba. Many of the top sites of this region are dedicated to Nebbiolo, but the top wines can rival anything from Barbera d'Asti. This one also tends to be widely available on the export market. Sometimes you'll see the word superiore on the label. It's noting more restrictive wine production techniques, including more limited grape yields, higher levels of fruit ripeness, and specific aging requirements. It's not necessarily worth the extra money. It depends on the individual wine producer. Okay, let's get to the wine tasting. The first wine up is the 2021 Abona Barbera del Monferrato. This label falls under the ownership of Marchesi di Barolo. This is one of the classic, iconic sources from the region. The wine sells for $20. Typical of Barbera, the core is a medium deep red, and there's a slight pinkish color at the edge of the glass. Oh, happy day. This smells wonderful. There's a pronounced Morello cherry characteristic to it, which really is quite typical with Barbera. But there's good purity, nice intensity coming from that glass. Smells great, super inviting. On the palate, very enjoyable. There's good weight. It's certainly not some big, dense, super extracted style of wine. There's also nothing thin or washed out about it. It has good presence on the palate, more of that mid-weight style. That dark fruit characteristic follows through. There's a little bit of a savory spice note as well. Oak does not play a big role in this wine, so what you're getting is much more of that fruit characteristic to it. But it's bright, it's fresh, there's good intensity. It's not a wine that's overly nuanced. It's really more of a direct, straightforward style. And it does have a little bit of that rustic characteristic. But typical of Barbera, you do get the acidity. You can feel it a little bit on the sides of your tongue. And the back palate is extremely soft, really smooth. And that is telltale of Barbera. I think this wine probably could hold up for a few years with no trouble. It has enough structure to do so, but I really don't see the benefit. I don't think this is a wine that's going to get any better with age. It's drinking very well at the present time. This is a rock solid Barbera. Next up is the 2021 Vietti Barbera d'Asti Treviña. This is a wine that I've had many times over the years, and for me, this is the benchmark standard from the region. Expect to pay around $18. Over the years, I've also cellared away many of their top Nebbiolo-based wines. These are some of the most cherished wines in my cellar. The color on this wine is just a bit deeper than the previous, with less fade at the edge of the glass. So with this wine, I want to say up front, I'm probably approaching this with a hefty degree of bias. I am a big fan of Vietti. I've had these wines many times over the decades. Absolutely love this Barbera d'Asti. So keep that in mind as I'm giving you my opinion here. Different aroma than the previous wine. This does have that dark cherry characteristic to it, but there's more layers to it. There's more of a, almost like a clove, and you get this Asian five spice characteristic to it, but it's a little more exotic in terms of the way it smells. Good intensity, nice purity. Really happy with the way this wine smells. On the palate, uh, really good weight. You can feel the volume on your palate. Uh, it's well balanced, nicely structured, very complete from start to finish. For me, this is a benchmark example of Barbera d'Asti. Love this wine, and it's consistent from vintage to vintage. This is a wine that you can age for 5, 6 years, 7 years from the vintage in good years. But it's really inviting when the wine is relatively young. And I think this wine is just drinking beautifully at the present time. But on the palate, you do get that dark fruit characteristic to it. It's almost a bit of like an olive tapenade character as well. There's a lot going on in this wine. Um, Beautiful example of Barbera d'Asti. And in terms of value for the money, this is outstanding. It gets good distribution, and if you can find it, the value is excellent. And this is one of the very best examples of Barbera d'Asti, bar none. The third wine up is the 2021 Elvio Cogno Barbera d'Alba. This is one of the benchmark sources from the region. This is also the splurge in today's tasting. This wine comes in at $38. This wine shows a bit more depth of color versus wines 1 and 2. So love the way this wine smells. I think we're going 3 for 3 today, just based on the aroma here. It's very pure. There's very lifted, expressive, wild berry characteristic, raspberry, blackberry. And again, it takes me back to that Asian five spice. There's a little bit of that spicy, savory note that comes into play. Very lifted, pronounced, good purity, smells wonderful. On the palate, another stunner. I mean, this has the it factor. Very complete, has good presence up front, mid, back palate. Again, the acidity is quite lifted. But unlike the first two wines, this has a bit more tannin. It's a little more tighter, a little more structured. I think this is a wine that actually would benefit from a couple of added years of bottle age. If not, just open it early and let it aerate. But really beautifully proportioned, very good length. It's nuanced. This is another excellent example of Barbera. Today has been a lineup of winners. This is a beauty. And the fourth wine up is the 2021 Micah Cellars Barbera from the Sierra Foothills in California. This wine typically sells for around $20, but I did see it in a couple of West Coast Costco's for $12.49. The color density here is a bit less versus the previous wines. While the vast majority of the world's Barbera comes from Northwest Italy, there's a few other noteworthy pockets around the world, one being the Sierra Foothills in California. This is an area that is well inland from the ocean, very warm. This is the old gold rush area, and it's the place where when Italian immigrants came to the U.S., they brought vines. And they brought things like Sangiovese, Zinfandel, Primitivo, and Barbera. The style has much more of an overt red fruit character. It's softer on the palate. The acidity is lower than the Italian versions, but very, very soft on the back palate. The wine has some good weight, but it's just a very different expression of Barbera. You've made it a long way into today's video. If you've not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing it right now. Also hit the like button. Definitely hit that notification bell, as that way you'll be kept up to speed on all things happening here. If you have any questions on Barbera, please post it down below. I do my very best to follow up on each and every one. If you're interested in more Italian wine videos, somewhere down along the bottom here, there's a link. Click on that. Looks like I'll be drinking some Barbera tonight. I hope you're drinking something interesting as well. Please stop back again before too long. Cheers.